guys, it's me, Moo. I just finished reading Mistletoe by Kimberly Lemming on Kindle Unlimited. And this is a very short story. It's about 55 pages, but the main character, Ruby, is one of my favorite female MCs. And Luca, her love interest, he's just adorable, and they make like the cutest couple. But let's get into it. The story starts off with Ruby, and we find out from Ruby that her father is cursed. How is he cursed, you ask? He stole ore from a fox demon. When he makes weapons out of this ore, the weapons come to life and talk. Very, very, very dirty. Her father is just like, and the reason why he had to steal ore was because there is talk of a war coming. One of the main people were killed, and all of these demons, which are basically mythical creatures, but they're called demons by human in the story, are talking about raiding the humans and all that. So a lot of people are getting paranoid and buying a whole bunch of weapons and cleaning out the ores. And unfortunately, because Ruby and her family are made of blacksmiths, they weren't able to go to all of the other mines that they normally get the ore from. So the father got desperate and stole ore from a fox demon. So Ruby's like, hey, why don't you go and apologize? And the dad's like, I tried, but the trees chased me out of there, so I can't. We have to live with this curse. And Ruby's like, what the hell? We're not going to live with this curse. I cannot live with all of these weapons screaming out very sexual things to our customers, and our customers not wanting to buy anything because of how uncomfortable they are because of this curse. So she's like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna apologize to the fox demon for you, Dad, because I have to fix your things as always. So he ends up giving her a sword. Who names themselves Alexis, and seriously, Alexis is one of my favorite characters. Regardless, it's just a sword with a curse on it, because she ends up becoming the hype woman to Ruby and like hyping her up and like kind of being her conscious. And I was like, ooh, I actually like this. This is really cute. So Ruby ends up going around town buying things for a basket, because she's like, hopefully the fox will take this basket as an okay and like curse my father. So she ends up going into the forest, and she ends up finding the fox, and he looks like an actual gigantic fox when she first meets him. And then she's like, here, and her basket was actually ruined because she ended up falling and like spilling a whole bunch of stuff. She's like, here, basket for you, please take the curse off my father. And he's like, do you really think that this is gonna help? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, well, no. Well, since you're here, you do something for me and I'll take the curse off. And she's like, okay, what is it? So he takes her to her house and transforms human, and the way he's described is very, 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 very hot. And he's like, pretend to be my girlfriend for a week while we're at this festival, and when the week is over, I will decurse your father and you can live happily ever after. And Ruby's like, that's it? He's like, yeah, that's it. She's like, okay, cool. But Luca had a different mindset, and he ends up doing something to her on the table, and I'm just like, oh my god, already? But because it's such like, it's a short story, of course they're ready. But I was just like I didn't mind, because Luca was like, he wasn't creepy about it, which is really cool, because there are some stories that I have read on Kindle Unlimited that make the love interest really creepy when proposing fake dating. But Luca didn't make it creepy at all, and Ruby, she consented to it, so I was like, okay, that's fine. I was like, if Ruby's okay with it, Ruby's okay with it. I'm not going to get mad at Luca about it. So then we find out that she basically has to stay with him at this festival that is hosted by the dragon, that he needs to talk to and ask to have the territory he lives in to be his territory, to have paperwork and everything that he owns that territory. And the reason being why he couldn't have it was because he was unmated. He didn't have a wife, a mate. Apparently there's a rule with this dragon who's in charge of all of the demons, and I say demons because that's what they're called in the book, that they need to have mates in order to have their own territory or property. So we come to find out that a lot of the female species or demons were killed off because of somebody like this big bad that didn't want them breeding and creating more demons. So it would be harder for them to find mates and harder for them to have litter or children. We get to the winter festival, and we see that Ruby's the only human and a third of females that are there. The first female is married to the dragon, whose name is Henrik, and her name's Camilla. And then there's our antagonist, Nadia, who is a werecat, and we don't know that until later. And Nadia kind of really doesn't like the attention that Ruby's getting from all the other demons. And she makes comments to Ruby, and Ruby's just right there. You know, she's like clapping back. And I'm like, yeah, Ruby, stand your ground. Don't let this werecat bitch say shit to you. We come to find out that they actually have a game called the Doe Hunt. So it's basically unwed females run out into the forest and the males chase after them and they fight one another to win the hand of this female. And I think the female also fights against them too, because I guess it's like a strength thing. And Ruby's like, well, I can't join, I'm human. And then Chameleon's like, well, what do you humans do for the winter festivals? And Ruby's like, oh, well, we hang lights, we do this, we do that, we hang mistletoe so people could kiss. And Chameleon's like, oh my god, mistletoe, yes. As a human, you should carry a mistletoe. So if somebody manages to take the mistletoe from you, they'll be your mate, and you would have to marry them. And then Ruby's like, oh gods. And then Nadia's like, makes a little sly remark about Ruby being human, not being able to play. And then Luca's like, no, she'll play. Yeah, she'll play. And I'll win because she's mine. And I'm like, oh, Luca. So then there's this really funny part at dinner, and I had to stop reading because I was cracking up. And the demons are toasting to being free from being brainwashed, and cinnamon was one of the main ingredients that helped them to do that. So they end up bringing out little bowls full of cinnamon. And me and Ruby had the same thought. I was like, oh, they're gonna put cinnamon on their food? I've never had like raw spiced cinnamon on meat and stuff. Is that good? You know? And no, the demons had a different kind of way of eating cinnamon. And they just took a spoonful, and then Ruby realized what's happening. She's like, Luca, no, you don't eat it like that. So Luca didn't eat it, but everybody else did. And it was just the funniest scene. Like, I could not stop laughing. And then Nadia, of course, had to be like really snippy with Ruby. And I'm like, oh my god, shut up, Nadia, nobody likes you. And Ruby, of course, clapped back. And it was just like, everybody just starts laughing when they realize, oh my god, it's a spice. You don't eat it like this. And I just thought it was like a funny, cute scene, and it didn't feel really forced at all. Like, there are scenes that I've read in fantasy books that seem very forced. Like, oh, I have to write this because it has to be part of this because I think it'd be hilarious. It flowed with the story, and it intertwined with how these demons don't know anything about humans or anything about their spices, and they just thought, hey, you eat it. And I thought that was like really cute and really well thought out and really well written. So after dinner, Luca ends up taking Ruby to these hot springs. And the way it is described, there was a part of me that's like, I wish that was real, because that sounds amazing. And the way it's described sounds so beautiful. And I was like, oh, hot springs, you know, if only. And so Luca ends up leaving to get towels, and Ruby's by herself with Alexis, the sword. And like I said, Alexis had become one of my favorite characters. So Alexis is talking to Ruby, and they're just chatting it up, and then somebody comes, and it's Nadia, and I'm like, oh god, Nadia, just give up. And this is where we find out that Nadia basically claims all of the men to be hers, even Luca. And I'm like, girl, like, I know you got the attention of all the dudes. Like, she was basically a pick-me girl, and she reminded me of a pick-me girl that I grew up with. Alexis, being Alexis, ends up like pissing her off, and Nadia doesn't realize it's Alexis talking. She thinks it's Ruby. So every time Alexis said something and Alexis, like, she was on a roll, and every time she said something, I found myself laughing, and I felt sorry for Ruby, because Ruby obviously didn't want Alexis to talk. And Nadia just was like, what'd you say to me? It's Ruby. And Ruby's like, I'm not saying anything. And then Alexis would be like, yes, I am. I'm saying this and this. And then Nadia would think that it's Ruby. And it was like a funny scene, but Alexis's clapbacks were top tier. They, like, I have read some people writing characters arguing and like back and forth, and a lot of it seemed choppy and didn't really make sense. But with Alexis, Nadia, and Ruby's conversation, it just flowed. There was no choppiness. Nadia just stomped away. I was like, I did not feel uncomfortable, and I was not taken out of that conversation. And the only reason I would be taken out of the conversation was to laugh or be like, oh my God, Alexis, stop. That's the only reason why I would be brought out of that conversation, was because I was squealing and being like, oh my God, Alexis, you're making it worse. Shut up. Poor Ruby. That's it. That's the only reason why. So then after Nadia leaves, Luca comes and some adult fun time happens and they end up getting an audience. And Luca's like, I'm going to prove to everybody that you are mine. And I'm like, it was well written. I have read so many adult stories on Kindle Unlimited that a lot of the intimacy, adult intimacy, is very awkward, and the male protagonist will say something that brings me out of it. But in this, it just, like, I'm going to keep saying this word, it flowed. It flowed like a river. It was smooth. Nothing brought me out. I was like, oh my God, in front of an audience. Okay. You know, red cheeks. You see how red my cheeks are? Yes. So after that, she passes out. And then we are told, like, leading up to the final day of the festival and the final day of their agreement, Ruby and Luca had been having the time of their lives, and Ruby had been falling in love with Luca. And Alexis, being her conscious, her hype up woman, sword woman, was like, just tell him you love him. And then she's like, no, I can't. But Luca ends up hearing it. And he's like, yeah, it's true. Do you want a baby now or later? Like, and then she's like, what? Are you serious? And he's like, yeah. Like, I've come to be fond of you. I like you. And then we end up getting a glimpse of her at the mistletoe, which actually they renamed the doe hunt to that, which was really cute. And she's fighting off a spider and 2 minotaurs. She had a whole bunch of people after her. And she was like, why are people after me if they know that Luca is mine? So then we find out from, I think, a minotaur or the spider person, one of those, that Nadia had told everybody the day before and the morning of, that her and Luca had Ruby and Luca had gotten into this big fight and decided to split, and whoever won her during the mistletoe she was going to choose as her mate. So that's why there were so many people after her. And she's like, what? No, we are still together. And what I loved is that Alexis was not only like a hype swordswoman, a literal sword, or her conscience, but Ruby used her to fight off the people in the mistletoe. And I was like, yes, they gave her a sword and she used it, because I cannot count how many books I have read where the female protagonist is given a weapon and they never fucking use it. They only hold it and threaten people, but they never use it. And I was really pleased to see Ruby using the sword to fight off the Minotaur and the spider person. So then we find out that Ruby actually got lost. She had no idea which way was east or west. And then when she finally figured out, she got to the cherry blossom, because Luca was like, just meet me at the cherry blossom. We'll just cheat. Meet me there and I'll get your mistletoe. There, we win. And we find out that Nadia is with him. And she's like, no, you know. And he's like, oh my God, Ruby, are you okay? Are you okay? But she bypasses Luca and punches Nadia in the face. And I'm like, woo, yes, go Ruby, punch her again. So she doesn't punch her again, but she kicks her. And I was like, okay, I'll take that. Nadia's about to attack Ruby again. And then Luca uses his powers to have the roots of the cherry tree grab Nadia and like hold her in place. And he basically says, if you ever touch my mate again, I'm going to kill you. And Nadia's like, I'm stronger than her. Why are you choosing her? And then Luca's like, because I fell in love with her. Like, I'm in love with Ruby. She is who I want. She is who I want to be with. And I'm like, oh my God, Luca. Anyways, so then Ruby's like, oh my God, are you serious? He's like, yes, I love you, blah, blah. So they end up kissing, and that's where the story ends. Now, I would have liked a little bit of more detail of what happened after the Winter Festival. Like, did the curse lift? Did Alexis ever stop talking? Did she keep Alexis? That's what I really wanted to know. But I did like how the story ended, because it was a short story, and of course we need final ending with the I love yous. Like I said, this is a Kindle Unlimited book, and it actually was one of my favorites that I've read so far. This book is actually part of a series. It's a short story, part of a series. It's called the Mead Mishap series. The next book is called That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, and the book after that is called That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion to a Werewolf. And I am excited to read those because Kimberly Lemmings' writing is actually really good. I love that there is no immediate flashbacks, that we get everything happening in real time, that if she does have a memory of something, it's something to do of what happened with that time we were out of it. So when she first gets to the festival, we have that one day, and then we time skip to the last day, but we get little bits and pieces of what happened within those times. That's it. We don't get bits and pieces of what happened last year, what happened the year before, or anything like that to bring me out of the story. This story kept my attention. It's well written. It's a fast-paced book. Ruby is hilarious. Alexis is my favorite character. Luca is very foxy. Very foxy. Like, if I were to think of a fox demon, Luca would be the person I would think of, honestly. Now, if you're not really into fantasy, but you like reading smut books, I would suggest you to read this as one of your first fantasy stories, because it doesn't have that much lore. And if we're given lore, it's quickly explained what it is. It doesn't go into full blowout fantasy. The author made sure to make it easy for people that are first coming into fantasy to be like, oh, okay, I can easily follow this, because I have read some KU books, Kindle Unlimited books that have fantasy, and it gets confusing because they go into lore and background and they're talking about the magic system and all that, and it's like, you get lost. But I did not get lost. Kimberly Lemmings' writing, I absolutely adore it. I love her writing style. I love her characters and how well thought out the world was, with just giving us world building with simple sentences. Kimberly's book, you don't have to read chapter after chapter after chapter to understand the world building. And that's what I love with this fantasy book, because you ask a question and she answers it like that. And I'm like, yes, okay, cool. I could still be in the story. It's an easy read. All the characters are lovable and likable, except Nadia. I love when a writer could write a character that you could hate. I love that. And I hated Nadia, and I was so happy she got hers at the end. If I were to rate this book, this would be my first 5 stars out of 5. Because I honestly found nothing really wrong with the writing, with the characters, with the world building. Nothing really wrong with it. Even the spice was written really well. Luca didn't say or do anything that made me go, ew, no, don't say that, because there are a lot of Kindle Unlimited books I have read that the main character will bring you out of it with a simple word or say something that sounds really gross. But with Luca, that did not happen. And I was just in awe. Yep. And that's all I have to say about this book. It was a great read. If you guys do want to read this book or check it out, I will have the links to the author's website and where to buy it in the description below. If you guys have read this book, please comment and tell me what you thought of it, because I am finding Kimberly Lemmings as one of my favorite authors now. I am going to devour her other books. Till then, I will see you guys, and I hope you guys have a nice day. Bye, guys. See you next time.